So now that we've covered the two acceptable outcomes for every scenario and the three clear priorities that we need to practice every time we work on team defense, I wanted to talk about building out your day up until the team defensive session. And I call this priming the engine, right? And so the idea of priming means that you're going to prepare your unit both mentally and physically to complete the tasks you expect in the team defensive session. You know, we've all had first and third defensive sessions at many levels, whether you're coaching high school or club baseball or youth baseball or collegiate baseball, and you run a first and third and it's supposed to go for 15 minutes and it goes for 30 and you're furious and BP starts late and you know now the sun's going down and you're going to be late for dinner and your wife's going to be pissed, and it's all because you either couldn't play catch, they didn't know where they were supposed to be, or guys were making poor decisions. And so I think one way to avoid those horrendous team defensive situations where you're constantly stopping and bringing the group back in and then sending them back out and bringing them back to the mound and setting them back out is priming the engine, is having everything else happen in the day lead up to that session, and so you can get out in front, you can be proactive to the session you're going to run that day. So for example, let's say we are going to do cuts and relays as our team defensive session in a given day, knowing that that comes at the end. The day is going to start in the classroom, and so the first step would be the classroom. You cover cuts and relays in the classroom, and we'll expand on what the classroom setting is going to look like here later in this presentation. From there, you head out and you do what most defensives do to start. You're going to do a throwing program, and it's important that you can integrate some tasks in that throwing program that relate directly to cuts and relays. And so you can talk about the mechanics of how you're going to stand as an infielder and how you're going to hold your hands up and how you're going to let the ball travel. All of that can happen during the throwing program, so it doesn't have to happen during the team defense where everyone's waiting, and we'll get into that more as well. Third, after the throwing program, you have your individual defensive session like everyone else does, where you split in your position groups. And in addition to doing the regular tasks that come with being an outfielder or being an infielder, mix in some of the tasks that are going to show up in the team defense. So if you're going to do cuts and relays and you're going to hit balls into the alleys, the outfielders, in addition to their regular fly ball and ground ball work, can work on playing balls off the wall. Just knowing that that's going to be coming up once the group gets together. The infielders on a cut and relay session can work on some of the movements that come with being a relay man, being a cut man, or applying a tag. And so, like I said, just like the previous two sections, we'll get into that more later in this presentation. Following that comes the AAR, the after action report. And I think it's really, really important for the learners to have an opportunity to review the session in some way, shape, or form, whether that's immediately after or in the classroom the following day, to truly grasp the concepts that were presented on the field. And so that's what I consider priming the engine, and that's the really, really important first building block or the backbone to effectively teaching team defense. As I just talked about, every good team defensive session starts in the classroom. And if you don't have the classroom, that can be the dugout, it can be a meeting room. Anywhere is a classroom. The idea is that you're stopping any physical activity and taking the time to break down a concept. And so that's what makes it a classroom, not the physical classroom. Now, Coach Corbin did an amazing job a few years ago doing a presentation on team defense and specifically the classroom. And I believe that's kind of the gold standard in terms of classroom sessions. And I'm going to expand on some concepts. He talked about that a little bit. So for me, I call it the 3 V's of the classroom. And so the 3 V's are visuals, voices, and victory. And so the first V being visual, that includes videos, drawings, diagram, using pictures on a board. We had some really high quality team defensive sessions in the classroom when I was with the Indians organization, where we cut out the heads of different minor league infielders, and we put them on magnets on the whiteboard, and we wrote out a scenario, and we asked the guys to move themselves into space, and it brought out a bunch of laughter, but it created some really, really good discussions where people were like, why are you moving your head there? That's not working. And so those visuals, those videos, those drawings, those diagrams are really, really great wide nets that can catch all the different types of learners on your ball club and really get them seeing the big picture to each of the plays that they're gonna encounter in the game. Second V, after visual, is voices. And for me, this is very, very important. And it, you know, a lot of us are familiar with the educational concept that the speaker is the person who's carrying the cognitive load, right? So someone who's doing all the speaking, if the teacher gets up there and he lectures at you for 50 minutes, the person who understands the material the most by the end of it is the person person who just finished lecturing about it for 50 minutes. However, when you're having a discussion or you're changing presenters, that's giving a lot of different people opportunities to carry that cognitive load and therefore learn the concepts better. And so for me, it's really, really important to avoid the solo coach presentation and start team discussions instead. Ask pointed questions and allow different voices to speak out. And then also rotate presenters. Just say, hey, this week, the catchers are going to teach us our first and third play. And they have to get up in front of the entire group and explain, okay, what are the priorities? Play one is throwing straight through, and that goes in the out acquisition bucket because, it's early game, we're up by a bunch, so we're just throwing straight through. And, you get a ton of engagement because all the guys are watching and they're waiting for somebody to say something funny or screw up, and they don't realize that you've really tricked them into engaging in this discussion. And then you can say, okay, 2 days from now, the pitchers are going to get up there and they're going to explain our pick plays. And then 4 days from now, the outfielders are going to get up there and they're going to walk us through our tandem relays. And you're going to get a lot more discussion. And most importantly, you're going to be rotating who's carrying that cognitive load and who's going to get the most out of the session. So that's the first two V's, visuals and voices. And then the third V is victory. And I think a lot of time when we teach concepts to our guys, we say, hey, this is the wheel. Hey, this is the return play for first and third. We do it so abstractly. It's like teaching calculus in high school and they can't really see how they're going to use this. What's the practicality? And so I think a really important part of teaching baseball in the classroom is making sure you tie every lesson being taught back to winning, back to victory, showing videos that this is when this play was completed successfully by this major league team if the video is available, and that's therefore they won. This is when this play was created unsuccessfully or not completed, and this is why they lost. And I think having the gravity of when you screw up team defensive plays, when you screw up plays where more than 3 defenders are involved and more than 2 or 3 defenders touch the baseball, that makes or breaks innings and therefore games and therefore series and therefore seasons. And so I think always bringing it back to that and showing them, hey, this is the big picture. And that's why I think every single day should start in the classroom when you're doing team defense, or start with some kind of consolidated meeting.